Hi, I'm Dan Kreiness, host of the Leader of Learning podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Coming up on episode 208 of the House of EdTech podcast, I want to know, are you riding the Wakelet wave, dudes? Because that's what we're going to do today as we talk to Tisha Poncio and Rick Butterworth. Strike up the band. Welcome to the House of EdTech. My name is Chris Nessie. The House of EdTech launched in 2014, giving me the opportunity to speak with teachers, leaders, and creators so you can more effectively integrate technology, strengthen your pedagogy, and have more confidence in your classroom and school so you can make an impact. Get involved with the podcast by visiting my website, chrisnessie.com. Using technology isn't difficult, and this is where it begins. This is the House of EdTech. And we're back. It is the beginning of the school year. We are in the month of September. And yeah, I'm excited. The school year is off to a good start so far. I've met my 6 high school classes. Jackie, the student teacher, is doing a great job so far. And one day she'll listen to the show and she will hear that I said that. Let's see. As I'm recording this, I'm getting ready to start the fall semester at Rutgers, where I'm an adjunct professor as well. And if you didn't know, yes, I teach high school history, and I adjunct at Rutgers University in the School of Communication, where I teach courses related to leadership and technology. And it's a lot of fun. Really, teaching is a lot of fun. It's kind of why I do it. But speaking of fun, I've got a great episode for you. I teased it at the end of episode 207, and today I'm sharing a conversation that I had recently with Tisha Poncio, who's been on the show before. She was on episode 182 when we talked a little bit about Wakelet. And this time, she has brought her friend from Wakelet, Rick Butterworth. He manages engineering and operations, and he's one of the founding members of Wakelet. Now, I want to let you know right up front that if you go to chrisnessie.com/208, you're going to be able to get to a link that has some great Wakelet resources that are available that Tisha took the time to make up. Well, I mean, she didn't make up stuff, but she put it together. You know what I'm saying. So hit up chrisnessie.com/208. And if you're listening in the player, your mobile device or wherever you're listening right now, tap the cover art. You should know how to use your podcast listening app. And there will be show notes there as well. So make sure you do that and check out all of the great Wakelet resources that Tisha put together. And let's see, what else? I've got 2 House of EdTech recommendations for you. So why don't we do that? And then I'll play that conversation I had. So for this episode's House of EdTech recommendation, I've got 2, count them 2, recommendations for you. The first is artificial intelligence art. Yes, I'm sure that, if you're listening to a podcast like this, you must also be aware of websites and programs that are creating art using artificial intelligence. And I found a cool website that I want to share with you. It is crayon.com, but crayon is spelled C-R-A-I-Y-O-N. Get it? There's an AI for the AI. So if you go out to crayon.com, it will, basically there's a text field, and you can type in whatever you want into that text field, and it will take up to 2 minutes, usually less than that, to generate 6 to 8 AI pieces of art, graphics, whatever you want to call it, based on your search term. I have searched such things as Superman golfing, Obama podcasting on a horse, Mickey Mouse riding a skateboard. And you can literally type in anything. I typed my own name in, and it generated images that, I mean, they don't look like me. So I imagine the more that's out there about the keywords, the better the art will be. But this is definitely something worth checking out, whether you teach art or not. Maybe you teach computer classes, or you just want to have your kids try this out, or you want to try it out. Again, it is crayon.com, CRAIYON.com. And the next thing I want to recommend in this episode is Note. And Note is spelled KNOWT. And the website is getnote.io. I found this on TikTok, and while I took the note, unfortunately, I don't remember I don't remember who the user was, so I can't give them that shout out. But Note is, first and foremost, 100% free to use. And Note lets you write, share, and browse notes for studying. So this is a great resource, probably for students in 5 through 12. Note creates flashcards instantly from your notes. You can also import Quizlets. And last time I checked, Quizlet has this thing where students have to pay to make flashcards. Also, the last time I checked, students don't have a lot of money. So if they're making decks on Quizlet to study from and they can't access them, they can import that right into Note, and it will create flashcard sets. And you can study them, obviously, how you study flashcards. And again, you can import any Quizlet in seconds, whether you created it or you found a great Quizlet set. So check out Note, again, 100% free to use, and the website is getnote.io, and that's GETKNOWT.io. And those are my EdTech recommendations. And now it's time for this episode's featured content. And again, I had a great conversation with Tisha Poncio and Rick Butterworth, both from Wakelet. And again, you're going to go out to chrisnessy.com/208, and there will be a link in the show notes for a Wakelet resource that Tisha put together based on things that we talked about in this conversation. So thank you again to Tisha for putting that together, and thank you in advance for going to check it out and riding that Wakelet wave. Now, without further ado, here is my conversation with Tisha and Rick. Joining me now on the House of EdTech, I have not one but two awesome guests, as I teased. I am speaking again with Tisha Poncio. She was my guest on episode 182. She's a former classroom teacher, and she is now a digital learning specialist at Wakelet. And I am joined by her Wakelet compadre, Rick Butterworth. Rick manages engineering and operations, and he is a founding member of Wakelet. And he joins us from across the pond in Manchester, England. Rick Butterworth and Tisha Poncio, welcome to the House of EdTech.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you very much.
All right, so we are not going to waste time. We are going to dive into what I think is the episode title, is like, what's new with Wakelet, and are you riding the Wakelet wave? So Tisha and Rick and Tisha, what is awesome for teachers here in the fall of 2022 with Wakelet?
Well, we are riding the Wakelet wave. Let's just clarify that. The Wakelet wave is actually going all over the world. Most recently, Texas, maybe New Jersey, New York, Florida, obviously in Manchester, England. But I'm going to let Rick recap some of the things that we did for Wakelet Live and talk about product, and then we'll move into some programming talk as well.
Yeah, so we've had some exciting updates that we've been doing, especially over the last 12 months. Looking at the actual product itself, the biggest things that we're looking at is two areas. Is the general integrations that we offer, making improvements there, and also the performance, scalability, usability, and biggest one, accessibility for students right across the board. So what we're doing is really overhauling the platform, updating the key areas right now, And hopefully in the next month or two, maybe some nice releases will be coming out. But definitely with the integration side of things, we've already released Canva, Miro integration. We obviously have multiple integrations with YouTube, Twitter, Flip, Spotify, anything like that. But we really want to make it the central point to integrate all the amazing applications that teachers can use. And that's our biggest aim.
Now, Rick, when you talk about integrations, that means one thing to me, and it might mean something to my listener. What does it mean for Wakelet when we're talking about integrations? Because you mentioned Spotify, you mentioned Twitter. So what does that mean for the user?
Yeah, so for example, Spotify, if you add a link from Spotify, so it could be a song, it could be a playlist, that embeds right into your
Could it be a podcast?
Exactly. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. I think we also have an integration with a couple of podcast channels as well. So the possibilities are endless there. But the great thing is it embeds directly into your collection and you can play it within the collection. You don't have to move to any other websites or anything like that. It's all in one. The other side of the integrations like Flip and Twitter is you can actually record videos from Flip directly from Wakelet and add it straight to Wakelet with ease. With Twitter, you can search Twitter, you can add multiple tweets into your collection, all with just a couple of clicks. So it really simplifies the process. And we just want to offer people a quick, snappy integration like that, as many as possible across the platform.
Right. And that enhances our ability as the user to create these robust, vibrant collections that are dynamic and not so static, but they're interactive. So we can play our videos, we can play the audio. Now they got me thinking with the audio piece, what I do at Rutgers for my listener who knows that I'm an adjunct professor, one of the classes I teach, I have students creating podcast episodes. And as a way for me to kind of collect all their stuff together, I use Wakelet and I have a number of boards set up where I say, all right, they're using SoundCloud. So I don't know if the SoundCloud has the integration, but that's what I have them use in the class, which I want to get away from, but that's a topic for another day. But I'm using those to share out what my college students are creating with my department chair, other professors, and just as a place that the students can point back to share out other things that they've worked on. So yeah, good stuff.
Yeah. So as well as that, we're looking at a new area called classrooms as well. So one of the biggest things that we've been working on, we do have the feature is already there in Wakelet, but we've been making even bigger changes to it and additions for teachers. Because one of the biggest problems that we have for educators is serving for under 13, your K-12s. And this is where we've tried to allow teachers or schools to take ownership for the students' accounts. And we've tried it in different ways, but they've been really restricting on what teachers can do. What we have now with classrooms is the ability to allow a teacher to import their students through Clever, ClassLink, Google Classroom, and actually allow the students to have profiles that is managed by the teacher. And the great thing is you have all the integrations available, and the teacher can also choose which integrations they want to allow to their students, so they have full control of that. And it just gives the student that environment that we want to give to every single person. And the great thing is we're now working with schools and districts to allow bigger imports, which offers one extra feature, which is what we call activities. And the great thing with activities is a teacher can basically create an activity for each of her students or his students, and each student can then go through that activity. And after a certain amount of time, the teacher may put a deadline to it. That activity can then be closed, and the teacher can review that activity for each individual student easily. So we're really starting to hone in on the classroom environment for K-12 and allow students to actually do the homework or activities all within one space.
And you know how happy that makes me, Chris Nesi.
Yes, I do know. Now, Rick, since you're here, I'm looking at, so I have two Wakelet accounts. I have one that I use through my school Gmail, right? And I have, another one that, I just kind of play with. So I'm noticing that the classrooms feature is available with my school district one, which is obviously where I want to have that. My question is, and I'm going into my account right now, is I see that I have my classrooms from last year. And you mentioned how you can import it. Is it easy to start fresh for this year? As I'm sitting here, I'm going to get ready to build my new Google Classrooms for the coming school year. I'm going to have all my new students. Is it easy to go in here? Because I'm not saying it's not, but I'm not seeing how right now as I'm looking at it.
Yeah, no problem. So very, very good question. It is one of the areas that we are offering a syncing process. So you will be able to import any new classrooms, any new students into your classrooms area in Wakelet. We know that the likes of Clever does a daily sync across the board, so it's regularly updated, but we are looking to offer the ability to update classrooms or change classrooms around, especially for the new school year. That's going to be the most important time for teachers who update Wakelet for themselves.
And if you're like me and you have multiple practice Wakelet classrooms, you would go, Chris Nessie, to one of those practice classrooms. And then at the bottom left-hand corner, you would hit Edit Classroom. And then you could scroll down and hit Delete. But be very mindful when you hit Delete. Make sure that's really what you want to do, okay?
Right. I'm just clicking along with you, and I see the delete for last year's classrooms. Now I'm going back to library. And if I click on Create Classroom in the bottom left, I see Google Classroom, Microsoft Clever. So obviously for me, the easiest thing is to click that Google Classroom button and sync up those new classes once they're created. All right. Rick Butterworth answered my questions. That makes the whole thing worth it.
Rick hasn't even talked to you about the iOS Android draw feature, which I know that your listeners are going to want to hear about. And he hasn't even shared with you that he was on a webinar last week with Nilan Taylor from Louisiana. She's a high school Spanish teacher. And they talked about sketchnoting using the iOS Android draw feature in Wakelet. And Rick talked about how it would accommodate learners like him. So I'm going to let him share that with you.
Tish really did it in a nutshell there for me. The last area from a product side especially, the iOS and Android app, we've done massive updates. I will leave the draw feature till the very last, but we are basically, like the website, updating the usability, the accessibility, scalability across the board. We brought out new designs for the home area. We've implemented widgets into both iOS and Android so you can access your content much faster. And the big one is the draw feature. So we wanted to offer students the ability to be creative and open-minded to what they could create on Wakelet, not just about adding links and embedding content in. We wanted them to use things like the touch screens on tablets and mobile phones, even if they've got like the Apple Pencil or a stylus, really just open into their creativity and what they may feel most comfortable with when they want to create something. And especially as Tish mentioned, I am dyslexic. So me reading stuff, writing stuff down, it's not as simple for me. It takes longer to process. So doing things like sketchnoting is so beneficial for me. And I love being able to draw things out and get a bigger picture where I can see everything interconnecting. Just helps me to learn and understand things much better. So yeah, the draw feature was a massive big hit for us, especially on iOS and Android.
Now I have to ask, Rick, so based on what you do for Wakelet, obviously you're in that, development side of things and you're adding these features that you're talking about. Where do you get your inspiration from when you consider how can we make and improve Wakelet and how do we make it better?
The number one thing is our community. It's really down to them why we're able to do what we do. Because if we create a great product, then the users are going to use it. They're going to tell their friends, their peers, and then they're going to start using the platform. And because they're using it maybe even day to day, we can start to see where not problems, but where we can make improvements or make additions. Because the thing is with Wakelet is we're not here to replace anyone. We're here to support. Because at the end of the day, we've all got the same goal. We want to make people's lives better and easier. So why don't we get all the products to come together and join forces and really go for the same goal? And that's the great thing with Wakelet is because we've got all these integrations, people don't have to choose Wakelet or something else. It's all about, well, use Wakelet to organize all the great tools that you love to use because they know how to use those tools already. They're just adding it to Wakelet. It's simple as that. So anytime we see an integration, loads of people shouting, oh, I'd love to have this. Yeah, let's get it in. Let's speak to whoever it is that they're wanting to use and get it added to Wakelet.
Wakelet's the EdTech party bus. Okay, Chris Nessie.
I love
You take all of the great digital tools that you want to use in your classroom for learning, whether it's K through higher ed, and you all get on the party bus, Wakelet, and drive the party bus to the end learning goal or wherever you want to go. Maybe New Jersey.
Now, your party bus analogy will help me with my next question.
Okay.
So sometimes when you get a party bus, sometimes somebody gets on the party bus and you're like, why did we let this person onto the party bus? Is there an integration that has been requested or a feature that the community has suggested where you've kind of been like, I don't understand why people would want to make that suggestion or use that integration, or maybe talk about, something that is coming as an integration, or, maybe the unicorn of integration that you'd love to be able to work with. So maybe you could tackle both of those, or you could say no comment and I'll move on. It's up to you.
Right now, there is no integration that we've not been able to do. Anytime that we've seen one that teachers have been asking for and stuff, we're happy to get on board, understand why they're wanting to do it, because speaking to the users is as important as generally listening to the feedback. It really gives us the benefit to know why they're wanting to do it so that we can give them the best experience possible from our end. As I say, anything that our users have requested, we've tried to accommodate where we can. The only reason why something might not come out the moment people ask is just down to what's a priority right now or what availability is for resources. Unfortunately, we're not Facebook. We don't have thousands of developers all around the world doing stuff. I wish we did and wish we could do everything, but it's just about prioritization at the moment. I can guarantee that we are working on things to get into the platform as quickly as we can.
Oh, for sure. And actually real quick, Rick, also, since I have you here and you're kind of the brains in the behind and how it works area, what goes into developing an integration? Like when you reach out to how does it work? How do you get another piece of technology to work with Wakelet? Let's go into the weeds a little bit.
Every single one's different on what it provides. The awesome thing is a lot of companies have dedicated APIs, which basically allows us to speak to that company. Say it's Spotify, for example. Their API will provide us with relevant information. So it might be a playlist with, say, 10 tracks in. We will get that information, and that will be then passed into Wakelet, maybe as an iframe, which is basically a container inside the website, and we can pull the required information into that. That's one way that we can have it. Or, say, for example, the YouTube or Twitter integration, we can actually hook into, say, their search. So, for example, like Twitter, we're able to search for particular content from a user or a hashtag or a keyword. And because Twitter have basically allowed us to use their search, we can then pull in the necessary information inside Wakelet rather than having users to go off to Twitter. So it depends what the company's developed so far, but there are also other companies where we've been able to do like partnerships with and see if we can work together to develop something that might be brand new to the market, but it benefits both sides. For example, when Flipgrid Shorts first came out, I think it was back in 2019, we were working with them on that first integration. We were one of the first companies to use the Flipgrid Shorts feature and actually embed it inside our product. So it just depends on where we are, where that company is, and also what that company offers. We tried to use as many APIs as we can to bring the integrations in.
Gotcha. Thank you for helping me understand that. Tisha, I've got a question for you. All of these new integrations, these new features, and I know we still have some stuff that we're going to discuss. How is that impacting or changing what you do as a digital learning specialist for Wakelet? How is your job impacted by all of this new shiny stuff?
Well, I would say that my role at Wakelet is really important because I call myself the translator between the teachers and the developers. So I'm able to give reasoning and the why behind what Rick just said. If a community member or a group of educators is asking for something, we'll just use Moat as an example, because I did have a meeting with developers about Moat and why it was really powerful for teachers, for students in the classroom. We had a whole discussion about feedback. And so I'm able to give them a better understanding. I'm able to give them a better understanding of what the classroom environment and that learning piece looks like, and the responsibility that educators have in order to get students to a particular goal. And so again, Moat just helps that educator help those students get to where they need to be. And so once I showed them that piece and the learning cycle, and they have a better understanding of integration, for example, in a classroom, where they have better understanding of how a US school may work, which is completely different than a UK school. You would assume that we would all be the same, but the truth is they're very different. The expectations from educators here, or digital learning specialists and instructional technology specialists, is very different. And so I've really tried to help give them a picture on a daily basis of why those things are important. One of the other big integrations that our community was asking for before I even joined, and I was part of that group, was Canva. And I would say that Canva is one of the most popular integrations because teachers latched onto Canva really early. It was kind of incredible. I remember knowing about Canva, and then suddenly I felt like everybody was using Canva for the classroom. And so because we have that integration with Wakelet, you can go into a Wakelet collection like I did with the show notes, and I clicked the Canva button to create a header. Those things are so important. One of the things, and Rick knows this and his team knows this, because when I visit, I always say this: the less clicks, the better. If a teacher doesn't have to click 10 times, they're going to be happier with the product no matter what. And so because I can do that as a teacher, I can go into a Wakelet collection, and a student can do this, click a couple of times and have a really pretty header very quickly. It just makes life so much easier. And Rick touched on that already. We want to make the lives easier for educators and students. And I think it's really important for us to listen to feedback. And I will tell you, being on both sides of it, Wakelet listens to feedback. Wakelet will listen because it's all about the people. Rick touched on this as well. It's about our community. Our community is the heart and soul of every single thing we do every day. We just don't want to stop working for all of you listening. We're hearing you. In the show notes, you'll see I put a support link. If you have an issue, you can email support. You can reach out to either of us. You'll have our contact information at the end. We want to hear from you. And I think it's important for just in general adults to practice giving solid, meaningful feedback. And I think companies need to be ready to listen to that instead of just shutting it down. I think it is a conversation that needs to continue every single day.
Yeah. So for all of you EdTech companies who don't listen to your users, don't take the feedback, what are you doing? Do it the Wakelet way. And again, I have noticed since Wakelet came onto the scene and bringing on somebody like Tisha, you guys do listen. We can all think of companies that have a feedback button, and you click the feedback button and you send them the feedback, and they don't do anything with it. Or when they do decide to do something with it, they give you the features halfway through the school year, and it is what it is. But I'm not sour at all on companies like that. But Tisha, you mentioned that in the show notes, there's going to be a plethora of resources. And yes, if you go out to chrisnesi.com/208, there's a link in the show notes to an awesome Wakelet board. Awesome because it starts with the House of EdTech logo. Then number 2, it's got Tisha's picture. And then number 3, it's got Rick and all of these resources and videos. It's a great Wakelet board that corresponds to this episode. So if you go to the show notes, you can then get to this. Or if you don't want to go to my website, just go to chrisnesi.com/Wakelet resources, and that link will work as well. So now, what's coming in the future?
Ooh, let me talk.
Tisha, take it
Okay,
away.
I have to talk about this. I have to highlight this because just like Rick was talking about, we're developing classrooms, we're making it better. Classrooms is this safe, secure, moderated, teacher moderated space on Wakelet. So it's completely different from Wakelet Spaces, if you're familiar with that. And it's completely separate from your main profile. Many of you start there, but this really serves the under 13 age group. And I just think it's so important because so many tools forget about that under 13 age group and they don't feel included. So they're making all of the developments and improvements on the back end. And then on the front end, we have things like the student certified course that just was released last week. And this is a self-paced course for students and really for teachers because we're taking that off of their plate. We've gifted them this certified course for students so that they can go into this course. They can learn Wakelet. They can learn how to use Wakelet. They can learn how to put together student digital learning portfolios. And then the teachers can really take off from there. In addition to that, if you're familiar with the Student Ambassador Program, this is really the program that changed my entire life. This is why I even decided to join Wakelet, because I saw the power of what this program did for my own students. So it's we're improving it because we keep getting asked to make these tasks for K through 5. So I'm actually working with someone on that. That's a little tidbit there that nobody knows. And we want to make it so that all of these students have access to the ambassador program, and it takes them through the 4 C's. So all of the C's that we already know as educators: communication, critical thinking, creativity, collaboration. And then we're adding the Wakelet curation, citizenship, but I would even push it further now to—
That's a lot of C's. Oh my goodness.
I'm going to add another one, Chris Nessie. Are you ready for the last one? Community. And we talked about that already, but Wakelet really loves their community. And I think as educators, we need to teach students how to be part of a community. So we have Wakelet Schools program that we have actually revamped. I've been working with the team on this Wakelet School rubric. And what this really does is it encompasses the certification programs for students and teachers and the Student Ambassador Program, but it takes it a step further and it really helps with visionary leadership. So really helping those leaders use Wakelet in a meaningful way. Personalized and inclusive learning environments for all students. Rick has mentioned this before, but accommodating all students, individualizing the learning, and then community culture. So one of the pieces on this Wakelet School rubric is to have schools actually go in and create a school-wide collaborative project that brings not just students and educators together, but their community together. And I just think it is so powerful. I watched it happen with my own students. We were doing things like that. We were creating podcasts. We were interviewing community members. You just do not get better than that. That is such a meaningful learning environment for every single stakeholder in that learning environment. And so those are some of the programs we have that we have revamped or recently created. And here's a little tidbit of knowledge that not everybody knows. Because student empowerment and student leadership is one of my passions, because digital portfolios, I think, are so important, not just for our students, but for us as adults. Showing that learning is so powerful. I can say on the resume all day that I can do a podcast, but if you see my podcast episodes and you see how great my audio is and maybe the way that I tell a story, that's completely more powerful than my resume saying it with a single line. We want to work on a portfolio course in Wakelet. So we're walking people through different modules on how to create a portfolio. For me, it was powerful using Wakelet. For my students, it was powerful using Wakelet. And I think when people see the power of that, it's so difficult to argue with the power of Wakelet. I tried, Chris Nessie. I tried for years to argue with the power of Wakelet, and yet here I am.
They sucked you right up.
They did. It's true. And then lastly, Rick hit on this, but we have our community page, and it's really easy. It's community.wakelet.com. And when you go to that page, you will see, and I've linked to this in the show notes, so don't feel like you have to write it down. But if you're listening and you want to go there while I'm talking, we have a whole product section on this landing page. Wakelet for Education, Wakelet for school districts. See, Rick hit on that a little bit, but that's one of the new things we have where we're talking to school districts and asking them, what things would you want? What's going to make it easier for you? So importing students and teachers all in one swoop, right? Giving analytics to those teachers so they know how their students are performing. There's so much there, but you can click on Wakelet for school districts under the product page or product section of the landing page. You can also look at the things that Rick talked about, features and apps and browser extensions. You can look at the programs that we just talked about, student ambassador program, schools program. And then there's a whole training section. We have a Wakelet certified course for teachers, a Microsoft educator course, a TCA course, Wakelet PD, Wakelet Academy. And we want you to become part of the community. Rick talked about that, but I think it's really important for you to understand that being part of this community is like nothing I've ever experienced. People will share things with you for free. You don't have to go pay for them. That's the first thing. But you get so many perks when you go from community member to community leader to ambassador. We host special events for our ambassadors at different conferences, ISTE, TCA, FETC, and we want all of you to be a part of it. Once you catch the Wakelet wave, the truth is you can't get away from it. It's just, it becomes part of who you are.
There's a lot there, Tisha. And
I had to pack a punch.
I mean, I know there's this new Mike Tyson thing on Hulu right now. You just came with the left, right. Like you just, man. Folks, you're going to have to go back and listen to that again. I know I'm going to have to listen to it again because it's just awesome. And I was going to make my final question. Oh, between the two, like for each of you, what's the most awesome thing you could do with Wakelet? And Tisha just came with the tsunami Wakelet wave of awesomeness that, it's not just about, Tisha, I think we talked about this the last time you were here. This is way more than the Pinterest of education at this point.
Yes.
Right? Pinterest is like riding a tricycle right now. Whereas Wakelet, in terms of bookmarking and bringing people together and being creative and dynamic versus static in terms of content curation and creation, this is heads and shoulders. This is as my 10-year-old might say, this is like the Bugatti of EdTech almost, with what is possible, right? And with people like Rick, leading the way, behind the scenes and, in the forefront with developing and making these things possible. Thank you. I'm going to say thank you from me, but I know that people listening also just want to say thank you as well. And also go join the community, right? Say thank you to them. Go talk to them on Twitter. It's all there. Now, I wouldn't be a good podcaster if I didn't also mention the fact that there is a Wakelet podcast.
There is.
How can people go and listen? What can they get from the Wakelet podcast?
Well, we have lots of things that we podcast about. I actually do a podcast. I host a podcast, Women in EdTech. And so I will bring on different women leaders in the educational technology space, which has been so powerful for me, but I think so powerful for so many of those in our community. We also have community podcasts. Go to the YouTube channel. I've linked it for you in the show note link that Chris has already mentioned. If you scroll all the way to the right side, it says follow Wakelet under the very last column, and you can scroll down and you can follow Wakelet on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. If you go to YouTube, you're going to get to go recap Wakelet Live, which is what Rick was recapping for you at the beginning of the podcast here. You can go re-listen to any session from our June Wakelet Community Week. You can go back and watch any of those podcasts that I've hosted or Amy or James or Misbah has hosted. You can go rewatch Rick's sketchnoting on Wakelet webinar from last week. I've linked that as well. If you're an administrator and you want to know how to use Wakelet as a school leader, I've added a blog there for you. And if you're interested in design thinking, you want to go watch the most recent podcast, Chris Nesi. I don't know if you've done this with D. Lanier. He is incredible. Mic drop moments all over the place. Everybody really enjoyed that episode. So I have actually linked that podcast for you under the webinars and blog column. And thank you for having us, Chris Nesi. I'm going to thank Rick and his team, because the truth is, and I tell them this every single day, I can't do my job as Wakelet Digital Learning Specialist without all the things that they're doing for their job. And so it really is a team effort all day, every day, 24/7.
I mean, thank you both so much for taking time here to be on this episode of the House of EdTech. Both of their contact information will be in the show notes at chrisnessy.com/208. But real quick, if each of you could let people know where they could connect with you on Twitter, because that's an awesome place to connect with people.
Yeah, you can catch me on Twitter, which is, you can search for me, Rick Butterworth, or my handle is R1CK11. And I'm also on TikTok, so I'm doing little tutorials, little quick tips on there as well. And my handle
Don't
on
let him
there
lie. He's dancing, folks. Go see his TikToks.
You might see a little dance in the future. You never know. But you can catch me on there, Rick, RICK.Wakelet, TikTok.
And I've linked my Twitter account as well. I'm Texas Tech Chick on Twitter. You can follow both of us on our Wakelet profiles. I've linked those for you as well. And then I'm also on TikTok, but I will not be dancing.
That's okay. I'm not dancing there either. All right, Tisha and Rick, thank you so much for being here on the show. And, well, if you're here once, you're here twice like Tisha, and that means Rick will certainly be back in the future to talk about whatever is awesome at Wakelet. Thank you for being here, both of you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Now it's time for the Just Give It a Try segment. And I got a question from Mike Brilla, friend of the podcast and also friend of AJ and I on Podcast PD. He is on Twitter at Mr_Brilla, BRILLA. And he tweeted at me earlier, and he said, does anyone know of a script you can run to take single Google slides from one folder and quickly combine them into one slide deck? I want kids to create their own slide, turn it in on Google Classroom, and then create a class deck from there. Now, my solution is not to do something with a script or anything, but I would do this in a couple of ways. And if you who is listening has other ways to do this, please tag me and Mike on Twitter with your ideas. I am, of course, at Mr. Nessy, MRNESI. And again, Mike Brilla is at Mr_Brilla, BRILLA. So, my thoughts on this. And I've sort of done this. I do it, words are hard sometimes. I do it at the beginning of the year, which I'm at. So I'm actually at the point where I'm doing this, where I'm going to have my students all in one Google slideshow in each of the classes I teach, and they're all going to be assigned a singular slide to work on for this beginning of the year project and assignment. Now that's one way to do it, and the way I do that through Google Classroom is I create the one Google slideshow and I assign the same slideshow to them, and I don't select the option to make a copy for each student. I want them all to access the same slideshow. Now, Mike is asking perhaps a different question where maybe there is some reason that he or maybe you want students to work on a slide without seeing what other people are doing. And maybe it's just me, but I think that maybe the quickest way to do that is to do some type of copy and paste. Now, maybe Mike is looking for a way to automate the process, but to me, Control or Command C and, V is, not something that I would feel took a lot of time. But maybe you feel differently and maybe you have a better answer. So if you have a different suggestion or there is an app or a script out there to quickly and automate the process of combining singular slides from multiple Google slide decks into one slide deck, let me and Mike know. You can do that on Twitter. You can leave a comment on the show notes for this episode at chrisnessy.com/208. Or if you want to talk about it in the Discord community, go over to chrisnessy.com/Discord, DISCORD, and join the community there. And Mike, hopefully we get an answer, but at least that's my thoughts on it. And if you want to participate in the Just Give It a Try segment, all you need to do is tweet at me, or you can send me an email, feedback@chrisnessy.com, or go over to the website and you can send a voicemail in, and I'll be happy to play your voicemail here on the show and discuss it. But again, the Just Give It a Try segment is for you to share a question or something that worked or something that didn't work in your school or your classroom that we can talk about here on the podcast. Thank you for listening to this episode of the House of EdTech. If you're not subscribed or following the show, I hope that you'll continue to make this podcast a part of your anytime, anywhere professional development. I want to again thank Tisha Poncio and Rick Butterworth for taking the time to have a fun conversation with me. And again, go out to chrisnessy.com/208 to get those resources. And hopefully your Wakelet experience is that much better for it. Keep the conversation going. You can send me an email about this episode or any episode that you have listened to in the back catalog. Go to chrisnessy.com and there's a way to send an email and also voicemail. But go to the website. If you enjoy the House of EdTech podcast, I'd like you to do me two favors. One, 100% without a doubt, you must do. The second is optional. So the first thing, tell somebody else about the podcast. Word of mouth is the best way to share a podcast you love. And even if you only sort of like this one, consider sharing it with someone today. Number two, and this is optional, you could also become an awesome supporter. I am very, very thankful for the ongoing financial support of the following people. And that includes Catherine Abdallah, Brian Carpenter, Dan Gallagher, Peggy George, Jeff Herb, Mike Messner, Matt Miller, JP Presavento, Patty Reefus, Lori Simpson, and Kyle Wilcox. But guess what? I've got a new awesome supporter. Shout out to Erin Cummings. She's a brand new awesome supporter. Thank you, Erin, for coming aboard and believing in what I'm doing here. If you are consuming this podcast and getting value, go over to chrisnessy.com/awesome, where you can support the show. It doesn't mean you don't get the podcast if you don't pay, because the podcast will always be free. But, I'll be honest, financial support does help me do things with the podcast. So thank you in advance. Again, chrisnessy.com/awesome. The next episode of the House of EdTech will be episode 209, and that's going to come your way on September 25th, 2022. Again, I can't stress enough that I appreciate you listening. And again, come over and be a part of the Discord, chrisnessy.com/Discord. There's some great channels and conversations happening in there, and I would love for you to be a part of those conversations. Until next time, thank you for learning with me, and remember, using technology isn't difficult. Just give it a try.